Hi, juniors. Dr. Raz here. I'm going to explain a little bit about cell respiration. So today, Thursday, we'll look at cell respiration, the first half of it, glycolysis and the Krebs cycle, a little bit of redox reactions with that. And then Friday, we will conclude cell respiration with the last two sections. All right. So just by way of a very kind of brief review, let's take a look at what's going on in the cell respiration reaction. Now we know photosynthesis uses energy from the sun in order to produce food for the green plant to stay alive with. And that happens in the chloroplast. Cell respiration takes part in our eukaryotic cells, and that instead of the chloroplast is going to take place in the mitochondria. So what happens there really is the opposite reaction to photosynthesis, right? Eukaryotes, we breathe in oxygen, eat food, and then we produce energy, give off carbon dioxide in the gas exchange, and lose water. So it's the exact opposite. We're also going to see a large amount of ATP produced especially at the end of photosynthesis, at the end of cell respiration in the electron transport chain. That's where most of the ATP that we need, the energy that we need for our development and metabolism, all that is found. All right. So ATP, again, we get, like I said, from respiration. And when we use that ATP, the way we get the energy is by breaking the bond between the third and second phosphate groups. So when that bond is broken, we have a release of energy, and then we're left with ADP, adenosine diphosphate. So that'll be something there. All right. Make this bigger. All right. Now, when we're looking at our reaction here, we can see that cell respiration is made up of those three main parts. Like I said, today we'll look at glycolysis, and the important thing about glycolysis is that it is done really in the absence of oxygen. And then we have our two aerobic parts of cell respiration, the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain. Now with diagrams like this, I always tell students to follow the arrows. Arrow in shows you what the reactants in a reaction are going to be, and arrows out will show you what is produced or made in that particular reaction. So let's start with the first stage here, which is glycolysis. Now we are going to produce a little bit of ATP here. We net 2 ATP molecules because we're going to use to continue on in the mitochondria. So glycolysis takes place in the cytoplasm. So that's the one stage that does not take place in the mitochondria, like the Krebs cycle, which is sometimes called the citric acid cycle, and the electron transport chain takes place in. All right. So let's start with glycolysis. Now, glycolysis is going to be that first step. So we'll start at the top here. We notice we have our 6-carbon glucose. Remember, glucose is C6H12O6. And we are going to end up using some of that energy to get the reaction moving in the right direction. So what we end up with is 4 ATP, but we use 2 of the ATP in this reaction. So these are just a lot of extraneous molecules. The important piece of this is that glucose is broken down into 2 3-carbon pyruvates. And from those pyruvates, we get a release of oxygen in one of 2 forms, either in the form of ATP or in the making of NADPH, which we'll take a look at. All right, so here's our 6-carbon glucose. Again, we're going to use 2 ATP to produce our 2 3-carbon pyruvate, or pyruvic acid, however you want to call that. Okay. So here we see what we're left with, phosphate 1 and phosphate 2. That's how we get to our 2 ATP. So those phosphate groups, are transferred and they move down the line. And in this, we make 4 ATP molecules. Glycolysis continues. It's going to occur in all eukaryotes and prokaryotes. And I said we only end up getting 2 ATP out of this reaction. So we used 2 up earlier. We made 4 altogether. So when we subtract those 2 that we used earlier from the 4 that we made, we end up with a final output of 2 ATP. Here's our pyruvate, which is where our 3 carbons come in, and so on. So you can, take a look at these reactions. These are, some really good diagrams that you can take a look at. A couple videos too, if you're unclear. I'll post a video also that I think will be enlightening for you. And then just, look at an outline, make sure you're familiar with that. And where does it occur? As I said, it's in the cytoplasm. What do we get? How much ATP? So the second part of this that I want to look at today is looking at some of the redox reactions and then the Krebs cycle. Now, Krebs cycle is sometimes called the citric acid cycle, and we'll see why in a second. So when we're talking about respiration, we're talking about 2 types of reactions that take place. One is an oxidation reaction, which means that the molecule is going to lose electrons. And because it's losing electrons, which are negative, that molecule will become more positive. And the other type of reaction is the reduction reaction. And that's going to be a molecule that gains electrons, which means that it is going to become more negative because of the negative charge associated with an electron. Usually these 2 reactions go together, right? That's why we call them redox, reduction and oxidation. This is a really nice chart put together for you here. This table shows exactly what is going on. And you can see everything is an opposite reaction. Oxidations lose electrons, reductions gain. Oxidation gains oxygen, that's where it gets its name from. Reduction loses. Oxidation loses hydrogen, reductions gain hydrogen. And then, the different bonds that are associated with it. So make sure you take a look at that. Like I said, usually these are reactions that are opposite to each other, right? And usually they'll be what we call a link reaction, right? Where you have a reduction, you should have an oxidation within that cell too. So NAD is reduction is one of the ways that we talk about these reactions. So we got the oxidation reaction on this side and the reduction reaction on this side. We can just kind of follow through on what is happening, right? So we take our two hydrogens and we split those into a proton and an electron. Those usually come from our ammonium ion here. And then we just, keep moving along, some electrons are absorbed, and then a protein will be released, and then the opposite is going to happen over here. Right? The main part of the redox reactions are the transformation of the NAD plus here into an NADH, right? The NAD plus has to lose the hydrogen atom, so that's a oxidation reaction. And NADH is going to gain that hydrogen, which makes it the reduction part of the equation. All right, the Krebs cycle, then stage 2 of our reaction, again, is aerobic in nature. And it does involve these redox types of reactions. So, it looks more complicated than really what it is. But we take here's our 3 carbons, pyruvic acids, remember that we got from glycolysis. And this is what starts the Krebs cycle, right? And then, like I said, just follow the reaction. So we start out right away with a reduction reaction, right? Our NAD plus to NADH. And then we continue to move through the various reactions. You see energy being made, and initially we will gain 1 ATP in that. So glucose gives us our pyruvic acid. From there, we start the Krebs cycle. So we saw a net 2 ATP made in glycolysis. We're going to see 2 more made in ATP. And then Friday, we'll look at where most of our ATP or energy is made, and that's going to be in the electron transport chain or ETC chain, where we're going to make an additional 32 ATP. So take a look at the videos as you can. I'll post some for you. Just make sure and I would use that table to differentiate between oxidation and reduction reactions. And we'll take a look at electron carriers, the electron transport chain tomorrow, what comes in and out of the Krebs cycle, and how we use energy. So if you have any questions after taking a look at this with cell respiration, please email me and we'll get it figured out. I'm going to send you a code for a Friday Zoom meeting. I'm also going to give you the block exam so that you can have some time to work on that. That's it. Hope you're all well. Bye.